this one explains to us how she got the answer. Let's pay close attention just in case there's a mistake somewhere and we can fix it very easily. All right, Bailey, go ahead.
Okay, so I know this one was 58 degrees, so this one was the base angle or base whatever. And then I did 58 plus 58 is 116, and then 180 minus 116 is 64. So I did 90 minus 64 to get the other angle, and that's what it said. I did 180 minus 160 to get 154, and divided that by 2, not 77 for that.
Awesome, thank you.
Good morning, DHS. Please stand, face the flag, and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Liberty and justice for all.
Great day, and don't forget to fill out your lunch form.
Okay. Great, tell us, do you agree or disagree? Yeah, and I love how you went through and you told them exactly why you did what you did. For instance, you called these base angles. Anytime on an isosceles triangle, the two congruent angles are base angles. You showed them how you got those and how you got this angle. And you even said that this one was 90 degrees. So that way you had to subtract it from 90. And then you subtract that from 180 and then divide by 2 to get those two angles. Perfect. This was one of the problems on the assignment yesterday. Some of the problems require a lot of thinking. The best advice I can give you is to do one angle at a time and write it down as you go, like label it how she did. There's one problem, there's actually a couple problems that I wanted to go over before the practice test. Okay? Because I think some of us were making it way too hard. And yesterday was a way for me to see, who's actually getting it and who is not getting it. Let's first look at number 9. Number 9 says find the value of x, and it has 2 of the angles marked congruent. So since it's an isosceles triangle, section 6.3 said if the 2 angles are congruent, then the 2 legs are congruent. So if these are the 2 angles, then these are the 2 legs. Well, if this side's 24, what's this side over here going to be equal to? 24. So you just set that equal to 24 and you solve. So you do 3 times x plus 2 equals 24. Now, you can actually solve this by using solving equations, or you can think 3 times what is 24? Well, 3 times 8 is 24. Well, x plus 2 has to equal 8, so x must have to equal 6. But if you solve it, 3x plus 6 equals 24. Subtract 6, you get 3x equals 18. Divide by 3x equals 6. So if you ever see that 2 things are congruent and one has an expression, just set it equal to the other side. And then just solve it. Yes?
If we didn't put the degrees,
No. None of it should have been degrees because you weren't finding angle measures. You were finding the value of an x. So only time you put degrees is if it asks you, like, what's the measure of angle 1? Yes. Did you just put 6? Yeah.
I missed like 5 of those.
Yeah, I'm going to go through and check each one to see why it was missed.
Based on the practice test, we don't put degrees like a degrees in one of them.
If they ask you for the measure of an angle, you put degrees. But if they ask for like solve for x or solve for y, then no, don't put degrees. This one here is another one that people tend to get confused on. Okay, so the first thing I notice is that these 2 are congruent. So this is an isosceles triangle, which means the legs are congruent. So like this side's equal to that side. And then I also noticed that these 3 sides are congruent. So this triangle is equilateral. Well, if it's equilateral, it's equiangular. Because it doesn't really give me any measures to go off of. Well, I know that an equiangular triangle, all angles are 60 degrees. So I mark them all 60 degrees. Okay, then I'm like, okay, what can I do? What does that give me? I'm like, well, I notice this is a right angle. So if this side's 60, this side right here is 30. oh, now I can find this. 180 minus 30 is 150 divided by 2 is 75. So these two angles are 75. And if y is the measure of that angle, then y must be 75. Okay. Well, if y is 75 and this side length here is y minus 25, I can just plug in 75 for y. So this side is 75 minus 25, which is 50. Well, if this side's 50 and these three sides are congruent, and that means all three of these sides are 50. And if this side's 50, that side's also equal to 50. So x would have to equal 50. So notice I noticed one thing at a time. Picked out one little thing at a time to figure it out. And then over here, notice it's an equal angular triangle, which again automatically means 60. And these two make a linear pair. People tend to forget that. Don't forget linear pairs. 60, so this side's 120. And this is, how I know this is isosceles. If this was equilateral, or equal angular, it's also equilateral. So all three sides are equal to 28. Well, hey, I can solve for y. 4y equals 28 divided by 4y equals 7. This side's also 28. Well, look at this side, it's 28. So these two sides are congruent, so that means these two angles are congruent. So you do 180 minus 120, which is 60. Divide that by 2 is 30. So each of these are equal to 30 degrees. Now I can solve for x. 2x equals 30. So x equals 15. Yes.
Right here,
180
120.
minus 60, because that right there, those angles, if you look at them, it looks like that. No, it looks more like this. If this angle's 60, and these make a linear pair, they have to add up to 180. So you do 180 minus 60 to get 120. Like pretend like none of this other stuff is here. And you just have a straight line with two angles making up that straight line. Sometimes it helps to cover up all the noise, all the extra stuff. Because when you have so much stuff going on in one problem. And that's what tends to get people, is there's just so much, and in geometry, there's just so much stuff to remember. Usually in algebra, like once you're done solving equations, yeah, you have to know how to solve equations, but then we move on to graphing linear equations. And you sort of know how to solve an equation, but you don't really go back to it. Whereas geometry, you got to remember everything. You still got to remember how to name a point, how to name a segment. You got to remember linear pairs. You got to remember how congruent segments, congruent angles, supplementary angles, complementary angles. And you got to know all of that just to solve this one problem. Okay. All right, awesome. Some good questions. Like I said, I'm going to go back over the worksheet. I notice a lot of people, it kind of get wrong just because you capitalized the letter and I didn't. That's one of the directions I said make sure you use all lowercase and don't put spaces between like x equals 2. But I'll be going through and like if you put 6 instead of x equals 6, that it'll be fixed. I went through and fixed the first worksheet where that one problem was saying the two line segments are equal, but it should have said the two line segments are congruent. All right, you can go ahead and put everything away. And you have your chapter 6 practice test. Okay, so it's like an actual, or we're going to treat it like an actual test. Because if you make a 90% or above, then you won't have, this will be your actual test score and you won't have to take the test on Friday. Numbers 1, 2, and 3 says classify the triangle by its sides and by its angles. If you can't call it off if you think you have a brain fog, you can always look at the back, and I have the list of vocab terms to choose from for numbers 23 through 28, and I have all of the triangles on there, like an acute, obtuse, right, scaling, equilateral, equiangular. I think that's it. Okay, so I have them all listed back here, or if in case you didn't know how to spell it, they're listed back here. Make sure if there's any work to show, you show work, read questions carefully. After you get done with the test, I have the test analysis, I'll grade your test, give it back, and while I'm grading your test, you can be working on your review, which is due on Friday, I'll give you ideas. I'll give you back your test so you can do your test analysis hopefully today, that way we can spend the majority of the time tomorrow reviewing. Alright, Taylor, can I get you sit at number 11, please? Abby, can I get you to move to number 17, please? Natalie, can I get you to move to number 18, please? Lacey, can I get you to move to number 19, please? Alright, remember, during a test, no talking, keep your eyes on your own paper, read directions carefully. Not if they ask for like X equals. But like if they ask you, what's the measure of angle 1, then yes, 2 degrees. But I'm not gonna count it wrong just because you put a degree symbol when you shouldn't have, or you didn't put a degree symbol when you should have.